Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Decided to take Sunday off yesterday, and we are back at it today, Monday. This beautiful spring day where I'm at. And I'm sure many of you are experiencing really great weather where you are as well. So as we continue to cover the ongoing war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, over the last 24 hours we have seen two very significant Russian missile strikes against targets throughout Ukraine. There's been two very significant strikes that are not getting a lot of attention that have occurred by Russian forces. Obviously, for propaganda reasons, the Ukrainian state tend to emphasize the harm to civilian sites and structures. And in all probability, it could be either the Russian errant cruise missile possibly being damaged by a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile system, or it could be those very Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles designed to shoot down missiles that are then falling back to Earth and hitting targets. We just don't know at this point. And in all probability, it could be either or. But there's been two reported attacks that are starting to leak out of the very, very tightly controlled, propagandized machine that is inside of Ukraine. And that is the strike on Mykolaiv, down here to the south, just to the northeast of Odessa. Apparently, a command and control node was hit in that area and caused significant casualties to Ukrainian higher-ranking leadership individuals, reportedly. Obviously, there has been a lot of back-channel talk about what happened. There is even the possibility that there were foreign military personnel at that site as well. Very difficult to find out what actually happened, but nonetheless, it is causing quite a bit of chatter in Ukrainian circles about this strike near Mykolaiv. And it's if you look at Mykolaiv, there are a number of military units there, to include the Operational Command South. So a very important area for the Ukrainian military. Reportedly, one of the Admiralty buildings was hit. It looks like the Russians were trying to use bunker penetrators to get down deep at one of these possible targets in the city of Mykolaiv. You also have the 299th Aviation Brigade, the 10th Naval Aviation Brigade, you have territorial defense units, the 123rd Defense Brigade, you have the 503rd Marine Battalion, and then finally the 19th Public Protection Regiment National Guard. And in all likelihood, this area is being used as a staging area for possible offensive operations by the Ukrainian military, specifically directed towards the Kherson Oblast. Additionally, another strike occurred over here in the city of Pavlohgrad. And that is fairly significant, and I'll try to explain why. There are a number of military-related industries in this city. So how do we know that? How do we know there are targets sensitive to the Ukrainian military located in this area? Well, if you look at this military unit here, it is a security regiment, but when you click on it and you look at it, it is the 4th State Facilities Protection Regiment of the National Guard. These units, these Ukrainian National Guard units, are specifically designed to protect high-value Ukrainian installations. We could have seen any number of targets being hit by Russian cruise missiles. Again, there are industrial sites. There are industrial sites to the east of the city, and there are targets to the northwest as well that the Russians could have gone after. And we've seen a number of these strikes over the last few days, actually 2 waves of strikes that have occurred by Russian forces against targets throughout the Ukraine. But these 2 areas, namely, it looks like the Russian cruise missiles got through and impacted on some fairly sensitive targets. And we're still trying to ascertain, again, what sorts of casualties were caused by the cruise missile strikes on Mykolaiv. Early intel indicates that approximately 20 higher-ranking, meaning field-grade officer and higher, Ukrainian military personnel were either killed or injured in this strike. And again, possibly Western military personnel as well that are there to assist the Ukrainians. And obviously, if you look at some of the air defenses that are located near Mykolaiv, you have the 208th Anti-Aircraft Missile Brigade and a number of other units as well. Further here to the south, the 7th Anti-Aircraft Missile Division, and so forth and so on. Now, we continue to hear about the prospect of this Ukrainian counteroffensive. Things are starting to allegedly dry out in eastern Ukraine from some of the video footage we've seen. Some of the roads are getting a little better. It's still not completely ideal. I give it a couple of more weeks possibly before conditions are perfectly acceptable for large-scale offensive operations, maybe even later. But nonetheless, there appears to be a lot of pressure on the Ukrainian side of the equation to launch some sort of counteroffensive. Now, there's a mixed bag of theory and ideas coming out of the West, and there appears to be conflicting information in terms of what the West, what the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is looking for the Ukrainians to do. There are some circles in the NATO Higher Command in the United States that are a bit concerned that this could be some sort of Russian trap, that if the Ukrainians launch this offensive operation until they really have a better picture of what the Russians are going to do or getting ready to do, the Ukrainians could be setting themselves up for just a cataclysmic failure. And there's other circles that believe that the Russians are really having a tough time, that this may be, even though it's not completely ideal for the Ukrainians to launch a major offensive operation, they believe that the Russians are not in a very good position to defend against this offensive. And they believe that the Russian military units, specifically down here in the south, would essentially start to break up and dissolve against this very large-scale Ukrainian offensive. Who's right, who's wrong, only history will tell us in the end. But again, right now we see continued very, very heavy fighting taking place around Bakhmut. The fighting continues. Again, as I had reported earlier, Bakhmut has essentially resolved itself. It's very, very difficult for those Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut to continue resisting this Russian onslaught. And, we hear a lot about Wagner, but it's more than just Wagner units fighting in and around Bakhmut. You have elements of the 106th and 98th Guards Airborne Divisions fighting near Bakhmut. You have other elements of motorized rifle brigades near Bakhmut as well. So it's not all Wagner. Wagner is a component to this conflict, but it is not the entirety of Russian assets that are fighting in this area. And on this map, it does a very good job of showing you the disposition of Ukrainian forces, probably not so much of Russian forces that are located in this area. If you look at least in the military land map, you've got the 11th Wagner Battalion Group, another Wagner, and again Wagner. And it doesn't really give you really good insight into what's south and north of here, other than, in this case, near Krasnohora, the 106th Air Assault Division. We believe elements of this are also in the south, along with the 98th Airborne Division as well, including Russian Spetsnaz forces, Russian Spetsnaz as well. So again, all eyes are kind of waiting for what the other side is going to do. Is it the Ukrainians? Are they going to launch some sort of large-scale offensive operation against Russian forces? Is it the Russians? Are the Russians preparing to do something in the northeast, just to the north of Lysychansk? Again, a very large buildup of Russian forces in that area as well. So it's very difficult to say what's going to happen next. We'll just have to wait and see. And as it happens, we will absolutely report it. So thank you for joining us today. More to come very, very soon. And as always, have a good day.